So obviously Danny sort of set the national scene, and he's been kind enough to answer quite a few queries from us locally, because obviously having had the Winter Hill wildfire, having had a massive fire on Darwin, which is a neighbouring moor, and also Common Land in 2020, and then sort of plagued by sort of like the spectre of wildfire currently, this is very much a local topic of conversation for us. But we're here and we're on Winter Hill, so I thought, right, let's focus on the matter in hand. So this is Winter Hill, and this is what we look like about 3 weeks after the main fire event started. So this was taken by local United Utilities colleagues, and I mean, you can see our problems. Like, we are completely devegetated, we've lost all of our fences, and the whole thing is still burning. So it took the Fire and Rescue Service a very long time, the best part of 2 months, to get to grips with all of the hotspots on Rivington Moor, which is what you can see there. Now, one thing that Gareth mentioned, and it's something that Oliver kind of alluded to in his presentation, is that our fires are people started. So you know, wildfires don't happen on their own here currently. So it's all people, and whether it's intentional or unintentional, you know, there's an anthropogenic cause. We also here, as you know, because you've driven through it, we're in a peri-urban area. So we have 76 square kilometres of SSI, so the West Pennine Moors SSI, and we have millions of people close to us. And Winter Hill is fairly representative of the vegetation that you find around you. So you have millions of people close to really flammable material with lots of access, be it public rights of way, be it crow access land, be it common land, because we have lots of common land in the West Pennine Moors. And another thing that we have to mention, we have quite large centres of deprivation close by. So we've got people accessing our countryside, and yes, of course we want them to do so, because it's a fantastic place. But maybe they have less appreciation of how to behave in these habitats, less appreciation of the dangers, the risks, and the impacts that an incident can cause. And I think one of the key things that I'll finish with is just working together is really, really important. And it's strategic approaches that help to deal with this issue that have really helped us in the West Pennine Moors. Kind of, I don't want to say crack it, because we haven't cracked it. So Winter Hill. So it all started with a small fire in a plantation, actually. So this was a new plantation. Shouldn't really have burnt, but it was the grass that burnt, and that was on the 27th of June in 2018. That was a barbecue. So some people got in, jumped the fence, had a barbecue, didn't put it out properly. So that got put out, and then immediately the main fire started on the 29th of June. And that was two we think, definitely one arson incident, and then we think a copycat arson incident on the other side of the wall. And because the wind changed, so we had a westerly wind that sort of blew it that way, and then we had an easterly wind that then blew it back, it just kept going. So we had our first visit to the moor on the 25th of July. So that was about a month after the main fire started, and this is what came out of that. So, you know, you can start to see the significant damage that we've got. The incident was finally declared over and the access line was reopened on the 8th of August 2018. And 770 hectares burnt, and that was taken from the maximum fire extent on the 4th of July. So we've got big areas of purple moorgrass. So that's what happened to our purple moorgrass, and one of the key things about our purple moorgrass, because of the way the wind of the fire changed, is that it burnt the fine fuel of the purple moorgrass going in one direction, and then with that slower easterly wind, everything back burnt into the tussocks of the purple moorgrass. So then we have the dense fuel of the tussock burning like a candle wick, actually, and that's what's created these big circular hollows in our peat. and this is all the residue from the purple moorgrass tussocks. We then had big areas of heather, so don't forget that Oliver mentioned Smithills Moor, it was mined. We had lots of industry up here. It was also a grouse moor previous to that. So we actually had lots of heather, and the heather just incinerated. It was obviously a massive, had a massive impact. Massive impact on water quality. We've got the reservoir chain running down the western side, so the whole of the Anglesey reservoir chain. So that's pretty much the drinking water for Liverpool, you know. We also had the threat to the nationally important infrastructure, which you will all see when we go up to Mass today. We had 10 kilometres of dug fire breaks, so not quite as much as Fylingdales, but this is one of the fire breaks, and that was bulldozed. So, I mean, restore that. Go on, I challenge you. What on earth do you do with that? How do you return that to something that is blanket bog or heather moorland?
Can I just jump in there as Karen as well? People think that's a footpath as well now.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. So we have massive problems with antisocial behaviour and access, illegal access after the fire, because they were using all of our fire breaks and enjoying all of the burnt ground. We also lost 7.5 kilometres of fence, so every single fence within the fire burnt, gone, bye-bye. We had 99 hectares of bare ground, so this kind of stuff, that was still visible before the next growing season. So, you know, if you'd have gone up to the moor sort of December 2018, we still had nearly 100 hectares of bare ground. And we did some work with LiDAR, and we lost an average of 5 millimetres of peat over the hill, across the fire. And we're still recovering 8 years on, so Oliver and I will gladly point out some of the really knackered peat. So yeah, massive impact. So, restoring it. Now that has been an effort too, and I'd say we're like, I don't know, 20-30% in. That's 8 years on. So we were involved in all of the immediate kind of emergency response. We also convened and led the Winter Hill Recovery Partnership, which brought together the landowners, the fire and rescue service, the police, other services, and interested local ecologists and stakeholders. And we also supported the immediate restoration of the hill in terms of trying to get funding, but also working through methodologies of how we might do some of this stuff. So, for example, we put in some geojute here. So this was right next to the River Douglas, which is the headwaters of the catchment. And you were really worried about all of this kind of bringing sediment into the watercourse. So we put geojute on it to protect it, to give it some cover, and then we planted into that. We've also got some excavators here doing their best to restore the fire breaks. We've also got some more significant restoration works that took place under DEFRA's Nature for Climate grant. This is on the Smithills side of the hill. And this was some works that were done by Moors for Future Partnership. And this is the bare ground, the sort of standard bare ground treatment. So your heather brush and then your lime seed fertiliser treatment to try and get some vegetation back in these bare areas. We also excluded grazing from them. And then more recently, this is the exciting stuff that's just finished on the UU land at the moment. So we have done some very significant works on Winter Hill Flats. So you can see Winter Hill Flats, it's all got this wonderful sort of beige colour. And so you know immediately that that's purple moorgrass. So we were really lucky. Winter Hill Flats didn't burn in the fire of 2018. So there's a public right-of-way that runs diagonally here. And that public right-of-way is a stoned track, and that stopped the fire. I mean, it didn't stop it, but it was used as a control point to fight the fire from. And by virtue of that, the flats didn't burn. But we know that that is a massive risk, particularly as, you know, we are a hotspot for antisocial behaviour, and one of the local traditions is set fire to Winter Hill Flats for Easter. So hopefully this will make sure that Winter Hill Flats doesn't burn again, or at least if it does burn, it doesn't burn again very easily. So in terms of there's the restoration angle of things. Oliver and I have still got quite a lot of work to do, and we still have similar to do with United Utilities. That's only the first phase of work that needs to take place on Winter Hill. But in terms of preventative and strategic kind of bringing people together, we do have a number of outline fire directions in place. So you can see that Winter Hill's covered here, and then we've also got our massifs of Anglesark, Withmill and Wealton Moor along the Bromley pasture here. And this is all in the triple SI. Darwin isn't covered because Darwin is common land. And then the other one locally is Hoddleston Moss as well. But you can see that these outline fire directions are already in place. So when that fire severity index reaches a 5, there is the potential to close this access point. As Oliver also mentioned, we have our lovely public spaces protection order. That took a lot of hard work on everybody's part, and we do have to thank our local authorities and our fire and rescue service for bringing that to the fore and seeing it through. I would say it probably took the best part of 1.5 years to 2 years to get these in place. It took a lot of evidence, so you have to evidence this stuff. It has to go to the council's steering groups and to their senior decision making panels, and it also has to go out to public consultation. So imagine coordinating that across 3 local authorities, so Chorley, Blackburn and Darwin and Bolton, and we coordinated it so that they almost came into force at the same time, so that they expire at a similar time. And all of that work, and they last for 3 years. So, you can imagine, everybody's going, oh, please, let's keep them in place, because they're out to consultation for extension at the moment. And Woodland Trust, United Utilities, and lots of the other local landowners and the local authorities have been very instrumental in this, and particularly, kind of funding and also putting up signage. So this is one of the signs for the PSBO access points. So we've got other wildfire prevention that we've been doing. So Oliver mentioned fire breaks, so I'm not going to go into any detail there. My colleague Jacob, give everybody a wave. Jacob Miller, he represents our local team on the LFOG, so the Lancashire Fire Operations Group. And we support the fire and rescue service as much as we can. So one of the things that we did, and this is a slide that I nicked off one of my colleagues, we helped organise, helped mitigate some of the damage from, because obviously this is triple SI, and we sort of facilitated, as well as being present on the day, at a joint fire and rescue service training event. So this is where we kind of tested various scenarios up on Winter Hill. This is how we know that you go. You can't get all of your fire engines up the Mask Road when you need them. But we also we got permission to do a small controlled burn. We also gave permission for them to sort of test all of their equipment so that we could test it on actual slopes. What is the limit of this equipment? And also joint working protocols, testing those. Because one of the things that people didn't realise in the 2018 wildfire is that the big mast gets in the way. It's emitting its own signals, and that does rather get in the way of mobile phone signal and other comms. So that's another thing that they have to take into account in Winter Hill. We've also I've been knocking around for sort of 10 years in this landscape here, and so I've seen a lot of wildfire, and I've sort of facilitated a lot of prosecution cases. We've got one going through for Anglesark at the moment, where the suspects have been caught, and we've put together kind of community impact statements and other kind of witness statements for the police, so sort of working together with landowners and the police there. But we've also input into research articles and publications. And then obviously we've been heavily involved in kind of helping sort of co-design and facilitate restoration works. This is actually off Holcombe Moor, and then this is off Darwin, so some timber dams on Darwin. However, one of the big things that I can't put onto the slide, because it's not a thing yet, is that all of our local partners have been working very closely on one of these big countryside stewardship schemes, so a landscape recovery project for the area. And that landscape recovery project will cover most of this and a little bit of this, if it's successful. And the beauty of that landscape recovery project is that you don't just get your land management out of it, you also get the strategic stuff as well. So for us, that's going to mean a unified point of education and sort of public access information, sort of unified messages on social media. It's also going to mean a ranger service. So the West Pennine Moors used to have a ranger service many years ago, because it was earmarked to become a national landscape, and then that never happened. So yes, this landscape was covered by a team of like 8 to 10 rangers. There's nobody now. Access work, so a lot of our public access paths infrastructure is really neglected because it's been underfunded for many, many, many years. So by putting effort and money into that infrastructure and helping to improve it, we are hoping that we can lead people where we want them to be as opposed to where we don't want them to be. And also coordinated signage and making sure that our signage is up to date. And it's also informing them of the beauty of the landscape. You know, when you designate a triple SI, there is absolutely no requirement for you to put any signage up. Say, this is a triple SI and it's really important for nature. So we're missing a lot of that messaging across the landscape. But yes, it's that strategic stuff, getting everybody together, banging heads together. Where are we going to put our fire breaks? What kind of unified vegetation management are we going to do to help stop this landscape from burning? So that's all I'm going to say. But Jacob and I am around all day, so please kind of ask us questions, and yeah, look forward to listening to the discussion that ensues.